Okay, let's unpack this. Monday, April 28th, 2025. Big news out of Spain and Portugal.
Yeah, a massive power outage hit millions of people.
Right, and it wasn't just, the lights flickering.
Right.
We're talking subways grinding to a halt.
Traffic lights out, ATMs dead, internet connectivity just gone in many places.
For a region with, 50 million people? That's huge. It's more than just inconvenient.
Oh, absolutely. It disrupts daily life completely.
And what's really interesting is the initial story about the cause. It sounded pretty wild.
You mean the rare atmospheric phenomenon idea?
Exactly. Portugal's grid operator, RN, first talked about extreme temperature swings in Spain.
Causing anomalous oscillations, I think was the term, in the high voltage lines.
Yeah, like it threw the whole system out of sync. Sounded almost science fiction.
But then, that story changed pretty quickly, didn't it?
It did. According to Portuguese news, RN themselves walked that back.
So where does that leave us now? What's the official line?
Well, it's still a bit murky, honestly. Spain's prime minister mentioned a strong oscillation in the wider European grid.
Right, a broader grid.
But urged caution, about jumping to conclusions. And importantly, the Portuguese cyber authorities.
They ruled out a cyber attack, right?
Explicitly said no signs of that. So the actual trigger for this huge Iberian blackout, still undetermined.
Which really makes you think, doesn't it, how fragile this whole system is that we rely on.
Absolutely. That seamless digital life we have just hangs by a thread sometimes.
And it raises that key question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
How does one problem snowball like this?
Exactly. How does it become a massive blackout?
It often boils down to something called a cascading failure. Think of it like dominoes falling.
Okay.
Power grids need constant balance generation matching demand. One disturbance can start a chain reaction.
Right. And that's really the mission for us in this deep dive, isn't it? To understand what happened there, but also zoom out.
Yeah, look at how these big grids can fail, the vulnerabilities.
We'll look at the news from Spain and Portugal, obviously, but also pull in insights from that recent U.S. Department of Energy report.
The one from July 2024 on preventing outages and grid resilience.
That's the one. So the idea is to help you get up to speed on this critical stuff without getting totally lost in the technical jargon.
So connecting it back, that Iberian blackout is a real-world case study, you could say.
Definitely. So let's start with the specifics there. The timeline, the impact, it hit just after midday local time.
Yeah, 11:30 a.m. UK time.
Huh?
And bang, millions across the peninsula, Spain and Portugal, suddenly powerless.
Well, we mentioned the subways in Madrid and Lisbon stopping. Imagine that.
Total chaos. And traffic lights out, instant gridlock in major cities.
Phone lines down, ATMs useless.
Even some airport operations were hit. They had backups, but delays happened.
And the Madrid Open, the tennis tournament, got suspended.
Yeah, it just shows how deep the reliance goes. It hits everything.
And going back to that initial cause theory from RN.
The temperature swings and anomalous oscillations.
Right, the induced atmospheric variation bit. It sounded quite specific at first.
It did, but as you said, it didn't stick. RN themselves apparently refuted it later via Portuguese news.
Which just highlights how confusing things can be in the immediate aftermath, Narratives form fast.
And shift just as fast. So the official cause is still under investigation.
Yeah. That strong oscillation mention from the Spanish PM is interesting. Points maybe to a wider European grid issue or amplification.
But they're being careful not to speculate.
Mm-hmm.
And the cybersecurity angle seems closed off for now.
Which is somewhat reassuring, I suppose. So the big question on the ground was how long till the power's back?
Red Electrica in Spain estimated, 6 to 10 hours for full restoration?
Yeah, and they stressed it slow. You have to switch things back on carefully, piece by piece.
Can't just flip a giant switch. Portugal's initial estimates sounded maybe a bit longer. Up to a week was mentioned.
I saw that too, but later reports seem to align more with Spain's 6 to 10 hour time frame.
Okay, and a critical point early on was nuclear safety.
Right. Spain has 7 reactors.
The Safety Council confirmed they were all secure. 4 actually shut down automatically when the grid went down.
And their emergency generators kicked in.
Exactly, as designed.
Yeah.
So those safety protocols worked, which is good news.
Definitely. Okay, so we have this major event, unclear cause. Let's pivot to that fundamental question. How do these massive failures happen? This cascading failure idea.
Right, back to the dominoes. A grid is always in this delicate balance.
Yeah.
An initial event knocks it off.
Like what kind of event?
Could be anything, really. Losing a big power plant suddenly, a huge unexpected jump in demand, or a fault on a line, like a short circuit. That's the first domino.
Okay, so something goes wrong. What's domino number 2?
The system tries to protect itself. Automated devices kick in.
Like what?
Things like under-frequency load shedding. If the power supply frequency drops too low, the grid automatically cuts off some demand less critical loads to try and stabilize.
Okay, shedding load.
Or over-frequency tripping. If there's too much power, frequency goes too high, generators might automatically disconnect to avoid damage.
These sound like necessary safety features.
They are. But here's the catch. In an already stressed system, these actions themselves can worsen the imbalance.
Ah, so the cure can sometimes add to the problem.
Precisely. Taking generation or load offline shifts the burden onto other parts of the grid. Lines can get overloaded, they trip off too.
And that's the cascade. One thing tripping causes another to trip.
Exactly. It's a chain reaction. Each protection doing its job can, unfortunately, push the system closer to collapse if the initial problem is big enough or the system is vulnerable.
Leading to,
in the worst case, system collapse. Widespread blackouts like Spain and Portugal just saw.
Have we seen this kind of thing before?
Oh, definitely. The U.S. DOE report mentioned some big ones. A 2003 blackout in the northeast U.S. and Ontario was a classic cascade.
I remember that one. Huge.
Texas had that near miss in 2021 during the winter storm. And even the U.K. had a partial blackout a few years back.
What caused that one?
Reportedly, a lightning strike on an offshore wind farm. Just shows how one trigger can ripple outwards.
A single lightning strike.
Wow.
That really drives home the interconnectedness point. And Europe's grid is all linked up too, right?
Very much so. Across national borders, it helps with sharing power. Balancing things out normally is usually a strength.
But it also means trouble can spread.
It potentially could, yes. A big disturbance in one place like Iberia could theoretically impact neighbors.
But did it in this case?
Interestingly, reports suggest not significantly. Apparently, the interconnectors, the big lines between France and Spain, automatically open.
Like a circuit breaker.
Sort of, yeah. A safety mechanism that likely contained the blackout within the Iberian Peninsula, stopping it from spreading further into Europe.
That's a crucial detail. A safety net that worked. Okay, so we understand the event and the mechanism better. Let's bring in that US DOE report now. Preventing outages and enhancing the resilience of the electric grid. Why is this such a focus?
Well, the report makes it crystal clear. Our entire modern life runs on electricity. It's not just lights and gadgets.
It's everything.
Transportation, commerce, communications, healthcare, water, you name it. A major outage hits all of it.
So grid reliability, grid resilience, it's fundamental.
Absolutely. It's about quality of life, economic stability, even national security.
And that reliability is facing some serious headwinds, according to the report.
Definitely. The challenges are growing. One huge one is extreme weather. It's happening more often, and it's more intense.
The report had some stats on that.
Yeah, it cited NOAA data. In 2023 alone, the U.S. had 23 separate weather and climate disasters costing over $1 billion each.
$23 billion disasters in 1 year.
Yes. Floods, storms, hurricanes, wildfires, winter storms, the works. And the trend over the last 5 years shows a big increase.
And wildfires are a specific major concern mentioned.
A huge concern. 5 major wildfire events in the U.S. in the last 5 years. Again, over $1 billion in damage each. Plus, tragically, fatalities.
And the scale is increasing.
The report notes the largest areas burned in the last 70 years have all happened in the last decade. And there's a worrying link back to the grid itself sometimes.
How so?
Electrical equipment, like failing power lines in high winds, has actually caused some of the most destructive fires, particularly in California.
So the grid can cause fires, and fires can destroy the grid.
Exactly. It's a dangerous feedback loop. Fires damage poles, lines, substations, leading to outages.
On top of these natural threats, there's the age factor.
That's critical. A lot of the U.S. grid infrastructure dates back to the 60s and 70s.
So it's getting old.
Much of it is. The report says about 70% of transmission lines are over 25 years old, nearing the end of their expected lifespan.
And we're asking more of it now?
Much more. Higher demand, integrating renewables. It puts stress on older systems, making them more prone to failures, like those cascades.
Okay, so faced with aging infrastructure and worsening threats, what's being done? The OE report mentions the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Right, that law is funneling serious money into upgrades. The Department of Energy is managing about $12.8 billion, specifically for grid resilience.
$12.8 billion? That's a lot.
It is. It's managed by DOE's Grid Deployment Office. The strategy is basically twofold: harden what's there and build in more redundancy and local control.
How is that money getting out there? Through grants?
Primarily, yes. 2 main programs: First, competitive grants for utilities and industry. That's BIL Section 401-101C.
Okay.
The first round selected 16 projects, about $919 million in federal funds,
Yeah.
matched by significant private investment, too.
And what are these projects actually doing? What kind of upgrades?
Things like making distribution poles stronger against wind,
Mm.
installing advanced conductors that handle heat better.
Practical stuff.
Very practical. Burying power lines underground in high-risk zones. Building microgrids.
Microgrids. What are those exactly?
Think smaller, localized power systems. They can disconnect from the main grid during an outage and keep power flowing locally for a hospital or a community center, for example. Enhances local resilience.
Ah, I see. That makes sense. And the second grant program.
That's formula grants going directly to states, territories, and tribes. BIL Section 4101D.
Formula grants. So less competitive, more based on need or population.
Sort of, yeah. By October 2023, over $750 million had been awarded this way. These recipients are mostly still in the planning stages, figuring out their specific projects.
But the goal is the same.
Exactly. Reduce the impact of extreme weather, wildfires, natural disasters. States and tribes are identifying their biggest vulnerabilities and planning solutions.
So it's a combination of utility-level upgrades and state-local level planning and action. Makes sense. Now, one threat the DOE report touches on, but maybe less centrally, is cybersecurity.
Right. And that's becoming a huge piece of the resilience puzzle.
There was another report from Eurelectric in Europe that really focused on this.
Yes, and it's highly relevant. As grids get smarter, more digital smart meters, renewable integration, remote controls the cyber attack surface grows.
More points of entry for bad actors.
Precisely. And the Eurelectric report showed a worrying trend. Cyber attacks on Europe's power sector doubled between 2020 and 2022.
Doubled. Wow. What kind of attacks are we talking about?
Range.
Yeah.
Malware, including ransomware that locks up systems. Phishing to steal credentials.
Standard cybercrime stuff, but aimed at the grid.
Exactly. Also, denial of service attacks, DDoS, designed to overwhelm systems, disrupt monitoring, maybe even trigger physical failures indirectly.
Could that cause a cascade?
Potentially, yes, by disrupting control or visibility. Then there are supply chain attacks hitting the grid through vulnerable software or hardware from third parties.
That sounds tricky to defend against.
Very. And the report also mentioned hybrid threats combining cyber attacks with physical sabotage, which has unfortunately been seen in conflict zones.
And just like with physical disturbances, that interconnectedness of the European grid is a factor here too.
Definitely. A breach in one country could potentially spill over or be used as an entry point to attack another. The grid's strength becomes a potential vulnerability.
So Eurelectric is calling for more action.
Yes, they highlight EU efforts like the NIS2 Directive and the Cyber Resilience Act, but stress the need for consistent implementation, better coordination, skilled workforce, and robust information sharing across borders. Cybersecurity is energy security now.
No doubt about it. Okay, so bringing this all together, if we look back at the Iberian blackout and everything we've discussed, what are the main takeaways for you?
Well, first, that event in Spain and Portugal, even with the cause still fuzzy, is just a stark reminder, isn't it? These complex power grids are vulnerable.
Right, that instability leading to a cascade,
Yeah.
it can happen.
And second, it really highlights why grid resilience is such a massive focus now. It's not just one threat. It's this combination of extreme weather, aging infrastructure, wildfires, and cyber threats.
A perfect storm of challenges almost.
You could say that. And the efforts like those in the U.S. DOE report the hardening, the modernization, the microgrids, focusing on cyber, they feel incredibly necessary when you see a real-world event like Iberia.
Yeah, it grounds the policy discussion. This isn't abstract. It's about keeping the lights on, keeping society functioning.
Exactly. These investments are crucial to minimize disruptions and ensure that reliable power we all depend on.
So maybe a final thought for you, listening to this deep dive. We kind of take electricity for granted, don't we? It's just there.
Until it's not.
Right. And the events in Spain and Portugal pull back the curtain a bit on that vast, invisible infrastructure. It makes you think about all the complex things that have to go right constantly.
And what happens when they go wrong?
So maybe take a moment. Think about your own day. What depends on that steady flow of power? What would a long outage like the one they faced mean for you, even if you're thousands of miles away? It really underlines the need for energy security, for preparedness in this super connected world we live in.